to the Business Talk podcast. I am your host Deepak from India. We are honored and privileged to welcome Dr. P.K. Kannan, Dean's Chair in Marketing Science at the University of Maryland's Robert H. Smith School of Business, as our distinguished guest on today's podcast. Professor Kannan is a leading scholar in marketing analytics and digital marketing with expertise in applying statistical, econometric, machine learning, and AI methods to marketing data. His research spans mobile marketing, attribution modeling, media mix modeling, new product and service development, and customer relationship management. He previously served as an associate dean for strategic initiatives at the Smith School and has received grants from the National Science Foundation, Mellon Foundation, Science Applications International Corporation, and PwC. His work has appeared in top journals including Marketing Science, Management Science, Journal of Marketing Research, Journal of Marketing, and International Journal of Research in Marketing. Dr. Kannan's research has earned numerous accolades, including the John Little Best Paper Award, the Informed Society for Marketing Science Practice Prize, and 2 AMA MSI Poll Root Awards. He has also been 3 times finalist for the Paul Green Award and was honored in 2024 with the European Marketing Academic's Distinguished Marketing Scholar Award for his exceptional contributions to the field. An active leader in academic publishing, Professor Kannan serves as an associate editor for the Journal of Marketing Research and Journal of Marketing, senior editor at Production and Operations Management, and on the editorial board of the Journal of Service Research. He was editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Research in Marketing and has chaired both the American Marketing Association (SIG) on marketing research and the Informed Service Science section. Dr. Kannan's teaching covers marketing modeling, digital marketing, customer relationship management, and pricing, and he has delivered executive programs for multinational companies. In addition to his academic career, he brings corporate experience from Tata Engineering and Ingersoll Rand and has consulted for Frito-Lay, PepsiCo, Giant Food, Black & Decker, IBM, and others. In this episode, Dr. P.K. Kannan shares key insights from his research, AI-powered attribution and media mix modeling, cracking the code to smarter marketing spend. It's my pleasure to now welcome Dr. P.K. Kannan to the conversation. Dr. Kannan, we are truly honored that you have accepted our invitation and delighted to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me on, Deepak.
Professor, how has AI fundamentally changed the way marketers approach attribution compared to traditional last click or single touch models?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I will, answer this with a little bit of a historical background. So when we talk about attribution modeling, this is not a recent issue. I remember in the 80s and 90s, people used to talk about attribution of how marketing instruments really have an impact on ultimate conversion. And I recall having a conversation with IBM, and they were focusing on B2B conversions. And they used to have trade shows, send emails in the 90s, and then have telephone calls and so on. And they used to wonder in what order should they go about interacting with these potential clients. So they used to ask questions like, is an email a good starting point, or should we actually do a cold call and talk to them over telephone? What role does trade shows play? The trade shows should be preceded by an email, or should they be followed by an email or a telephone call? So they had all these kinds of questions. And it's in the conventional offline setting. And they came, to us and asked whether we can do some research on that and find out and tell them what is the optimal order in which we should go and what kind of role does each of these touch points play. But that problem was so interesting that the internal analysts at IBM wanted to do it themselves. So we never got to doing that particular project. Fast forward 10 to 15 years later, as people transitioned to e-commerce and looked at internet marketing as a way of reaching out to customers, this problem of attribution has become very important. And that's because more and more money has been allocated to online media. From offline media, television moved away, and then you started putting money in now influencer marketing and all these new forms of marketing. And one of the impetus for attribution to become very big was all these new instruments could be easily measured, right? So previously, if you thought about print or television and things like that, you really didn't have a clear idea. You could probably say it reached so many people, but you really didn't know how they reacted to it. But when it comes to online, you have a very clear data. Each piece of information can tell you what is going on. And so that's why attribution modeling became more important as companies started putting more money on online instruments. They wanted to know how these different channels were working and which was most effective and how much they contributed and so on. So attribution became very, very important. But again, it really depends on your business. If your business has a customer journey which is very short, then people really didn't care about attribution. They said, well, I talked to one of the do-it-yourself retailers here, and we tried to pitch our attribution model and said, hey, would you be interested in doing it? And the CMO said, oh, ours is basically an acute need. So, your pipe breaks down, you come to our store and get the replacement. Or something happens and you need to fix it immediately, you come to the store. So if that is the case, the customer journey has only one touch point. You really didn't need attribution. You kind of knew that, they came because, they saw your television ad or whatever. Now, attribution becomes more important when you have a longer customer journey where multiple touches are happening. So, for example, the amount of money involved is large. Let's say you want to get an insurance product for your home. You go and check out different places, get quotes, and check out online sources and so on. So the customer journey becomes long. And if the customer journey is long, then attribution becomes important because I want to know what really started the customer journey and what did the intermediate touches do to your conversion probabilities and so on. But yet, not many companies have full data on customer journey. And as a result, last touch, it becomes an easier way of using it, saying, I know where they came from, so I'm going to give credit to that, right? But if you do have customer journey information, nicely tagged, and you know exactly how customers were approached through different channels and what are the different touch points they had, then you can use a lot of these conventional techniques. And the conventional techniques are basically based on statistical models. So you have hidden Markov models, Markov models, and then point process models. And I know I have worked myself 10, 15 years ago on nested logic model and so on. So these things are very useful in trying to understand how you can attribute credit to the different touch points. But they all had a problem. That's because they have limitation in terms of how you can use them in an implementable setting. The number of channels that they can handle is not very many. Number of observations is also limited because if you have large number of observations, large number of channels, then some of the Bayesian techniques that you use will take days and days to really run and give you results. So there was a practical limitation that you had. Now, when you think about AI, all those limitations are completely removed. Now, AI can handle a large number of touch points, distinctly different touch points. Now, I remember using touch points of about 10 or 15, and that was really pushing the limit with conventional modeling. But in the case of AI, you can probably go into thousands. And the number of observations that you can handle is also very high. And over and above, the method is really fast. You can actually run some of these models within half a day and get your results. And so that's how AI has changed the game for attribution modeling.
Professor, multi-touch attribution can be incredibly complex. How do AI-powered models handle cross-platform customer journeys more effectively than traditional methods?
That's a very good question here. Let me try to, give you some examples of how the large language models that we have these days are trained on. So you think about, large language models that you use now, ChatGPT and other Gemini and everything else. these things have been trained on large amount of corpus of text, and they understand how text sentences are written, the relationship between different words in a sentence, and they get trained on it. And then they are able to figure out, when you look at a particular sentence, what word will come next in a sentence. Now, let me take a small example. Just this morning, I was sending out a message to one of my co-authors on Gmail, right? So Gmail has this Smart Compose, which is basically an LLM type of thing, which has been trained on lots and lots of text. So when I started writing, I'll get back to you as soon as I started writing, as soon, it automatically, gave me as soon as I can. That, words were already filled out in the next sentence. And you probably do that in Gmail all the time, and it predicts what you're going to say and fills it out automatically. Now, how does this happen? It happens because the underlying LLM has been trained on a number of similar sentences and corpus of text and so on and so forth. So it is able to relate each of these words and then starts predicting what is going to come next. So as soon as I said as soon, it automatically says as soon as I can, because that is typically what people say in the email, right? So it automatically predicts and gives me options. So this is the prediction that is underlying the training that LLM undergoes and able to provide. And so in the case of attribution, this is exactly what happens. So we are using transformers. Transformers are the heart of the LLMs, because that's how LLMs train themselves to understand what the patterns are. So we use the transformer technology in order to train the transformers on different historical data on customer journeys. So in a customer journey, maybe, oh, this person started off with the email touch point, came to my website, and then didn't do anything, but then got a display ad, and they clicked on the display ad, came to my website, didn't do much, and then went to paid search, and then came to my website and purchased something. So I have a customer journey here. So if I have lots and lots of customer journey data, I can use that customer journey data to train these transformers, and the transformers then take it and understand the patterns between all these different touch points and how they work, and then is able to predict what will be your next touch point. So if I were to tell transformer that the first two touch points I saw for this customer is email, and then the person came through paid search, it will automatically tell me, based on the predictive modeling, what is the likelihood that this person is going to come directly to your website, or what is the likelihood that this person will come through display, and things like that. And also will be able to provide you what is the likelihood that this person is going to convert. Right? So we are using the same technology that underlies LLMs in order to train on the customer journey data so that we can predict. Now, not only it does predicting, you can take all that data, the estimates that you get, and feed it into Shapley values and integrated gradient methods. And if you use integrated gradient method and Shapley values, then you can get attribution metrics and attribution estimates, right? So this is incredibly powerful that LLMs are able to do it. The transformer technology is able to do it. And the nice thing about this is I'm not constrained by how many channels I want to analyze. It could be lots and lots of different channels. So I'll give you another example. So we use the same transformer technology to model patient journey. So we had 4 years of patient data, how often they went to the doctors, for what reason, what was their problem, what medication they got. So think about that. In the last 4 years, you could have got so many different medications, so many different doctors you might have seen. And what we were predicting was whether this person was going to be addicted to opioid or not, right? So the transformer technology was able to handle all these different types of touch points, the different medications they were given, and the different doctor visits they made, and then figure out what is the probability that this person will get addicted to opioid. So it's a very powerful technique that we can use, and it actually takes away all the constraint that we have with conventional modeling. And that's one reason why people are so excited about using AI for attribution and other kinds of measurement techniques.
Dr. Kannan, what are some common pitfalls marketers face when implementing AI-driven attribution or media mix models, and how can they avoid them?
That's a good question, Deepak. Now, this is not just with AI-based attribution, but with any attribution modeling, it is always good to know that attribution is a backward-looking estimate, right? So basically what we are saying is, I had a specific media mix allocation. This is how much I put in emails, how much money I put in email, how much money I put in display, and all the other different instruments. And given all those instruments and given the targeting that I'm doing using that, I see the touch points that happen. And so once I have the data, I take the data and then analyze it using our technology, AI-based or conventional technology. What it gives me is how much value should I attribute to these different touch points for the conversions that happen. Now, these are all conversions that happened in the past. And the attribution metric that I get is basically for all the conversions that happened in the past, how I'm going to allocate that credit to the different channels. But remember that this all happened because you decided how much to allocate on different things. And it also is dependent upon how customers reacted and who did you target and so on. So conditional on the targeting that you did, conditional on the money that you invested, these are the attribution metrics. So attribution metric tells you what worked, right? So I put some money on display, but display wasn't really very effective, didn't contribute much. So it tells me those kind of things in the historical sense. Now, when you go and look at what is going to happen in the future, so I'm going to take all this attribution metric, get some insights from it. And once I get some insights from it, I am going to now allocate my media mix for going in the future, right? So basically, you're making some assumptions here. Your assumptions are whatever conditions were there in the past is going to be the same in the future. So based on what happened in the past, I'm going to take those insights and I hope the same conditions will exist and it will work in the same way if I were to allocate it in a particular way, right? So basically, it is basically, based on historical data, historical patterns that I observe, and I hope those historical patterns will still exist in the future. And that's basically what I'm doing. And I'm assuming that your targeting is exactly the same as it was in the past. And lots of other assumptions that you are underlying in the attribution metrics are all the same, right? So you got to take that with a grain of salt because you are making some assumptions here, and those assumptions need to be satisfied in order for your media mix model to be the same. Now, what I usually suggest to people is if you have more variations in your media mix, then you have tried out different policies and it'll give you some ideas as to how the different policies have worked. And under that different policy regime, how did the attributions work? And you should be then able to say more confidently what is going to happen in the future. But if you haven't had too much of a variation in your policy in the past, then your confidence level on these forward-looking decisions that you're making is also a little diminished.
Professor, media mix modeling has historically relied on historical data. How is AI enabling marketers to make real-time or predictive budget allocation decisions?
Good. Again, it follows from what I had just told you as my answer to the last question. In media mix, if you keep the same media mix that you had in the past and don't vary it much, then you don't learn much, right? In order for you to learn, you need to have some variation, right? So if I vary it and see what happens, then I learn a new thing about, okay, I changed this budget this way, it's positive. If I change the budget the other way, it is not as good, and so on. So as long as you have a lot of variations in the past, then you can take all those variations and then model it and then see what is going to happen and so on. Now in the conventional, so basically what happens is, whatever decisions you make, managers make a lot of decisions. Managers are not doing experiments. They would go and say, well, this is what I think is going to work, and this is how I'm going to spend the money. I think paid search works really well. I'm going to put a lot of money on paid search. I'm going to put a little money on the other one, right? So managers are making judgments based on their intuition as to how to allocate. They're not doing experiments, right? So all the data that we get from historical data is basically a function of how managers thought that the market will react to what the kind of allocation that they are doing, and they have done the decisions based on that. Now, in econometric terms, this is called endogeneity. Endogeneity really means it is the data that you get from historical. It is not an experiment. It's not randomly varied, but it is because people think that this is going to happen and they behave in a certain way because this is what their intuition tells them. Now, if you have that kind of a issue, then you don't see all the variations that are possible in the data. Now, with the AI, you can do what is known as counterfactual modeling. Counterfactual really means, okay, the manager allocated budget in a particular way. Now, what would have happened had the manager allocated the budget in a very different way, right? Now, of course, I cannot go back to the history and then change it. But in AI, there are new methods that are available which can actually do this counterfactual analysis, right? So what it allows you to do is, okay, I will try to kind of come up with a situation or a scenario. Had I changed the budget that I'm allocating in a certain way, what would have happened can be estimated using AI models. And that is the interesting thing about AI, that it allows you to do counterfactual modeling and understand more about what would have happened had I changed my budget, and use that information to learn what is the best thing to do going forward.
Professor, can you share a real-world case where AI-powered attribution significantly improved ROI, and what lessons marketers can take from it?
That's a good question. There are no easy case studies here to talk about because this is at a very early phase. We have done some, prototype modeling with some hospitality companies and also with some hospitals. So we really don't have, early results coming, but the early results that we have done with our prototype modeling are very, very, encouraging. And we have done a lot of simulations. On the other hand, what we have done is we have sort of taken the data and done attribution modeling using conventional methods. So we used hidden Markov models, point process models, and LSTM, again, an AI model, and then this transformer-based model. So we compared on historical data with lots and lots of different variations of historical data. We have done large number of simulations to see how the AI-based models work compared to these other models. Now, it just beats all the other models hands down. It's one of the best things that I have seen. I have not seen predictive ability of this kind any time in my career before. And in fact, when I was working with my students, I kept asking them, are you doing things correctly? You have not made any mistake, have you? Because it was so fantastic, the kind of predictive ability of these models, that sometimes you need to pinch yourself and say, am I dreaming here? So I think, and of course, we showed these results to some of these companies and they were blown away. And that's why they said, well, we'll take it slowly and we'll try to do it for some use cases and see how it works. And then if we are convinced, then we will try to, roll it out for other use cases. But I think that this technology is going to be game changing. And we will pretty much soon see a lot of consulting companies as well as companies start using AI-based attribution models.
Professor, how do AI and big data reduce bias in marketing measurement? And what types of biases are most important to watch for?
Okay, that's a good question. Bias is a very statistical term. And so I will answer that in a way that statistics professors would answer. First one is big data. By the name of it, you have a large amount of data. So there is a term called sampling bias. Sampling bias is, you're trying to learn something about the population, and then you take a sample from the population, and then you estimate your, estimates based on the sample. But then the sampled estimates from the sample are different from what you're trying to estimate. So that is called a sampling bias. Now, the sampling bias can be reduced if you have a larger sample size. So obviously, as the name implies, big data will give you a larger sample size so that the sampling bias can be reduced. Now, the other kind of bias, and this is very common in industry, is this human heuristic bias. Because you and I, as marketing managers, we make a lot of decisions and we kind of have some intuition in our brain. And the intuition is something that we carry around. And so the kind of decisions that we make is based on the biases that we have within ourselves. And so those kinds of biases come into play when you start allocating budget for media mix and looking at estimates from attribution and so on and so forth, right? I'll give you an example. So we did a attribution modeling for a large hospitality chain. And then we came up and said, you think that direct visits to your channel, to your website, contributes a lot to your conversion. But we said that, it's overestimated. Now, the loyalty program members got really upset with us because the loyalty program members usually say, oh, if you have a loyalty membership, you will come directly to the website to book. And so they were not very happy when we said that the direct visits are not really contributing as much as to the conversions. And they were saying your modeling is all wrong. So there is an inherent bias because you come from a different background and each of us have, inherent bias. But then when you have big data and AI-based attribution models, you really can show it to them that over time, whatever they were thinking is not correct because we have real good data to really show, what the, actual reality is, right? So that you can sort of take care of this human-induced heuristic bias can be taken care of with big data and AI techniques. Now, the one thing that I must point out is when you talk about attribution estimates that you have are basically not causal. That is, it is not based on experiments, like what we talked about. So I have not changed all my media mix allocations differently and then seeing what the contribution of each of those channels are. It is based on a specific allocation that managers have done, and I've got the estimates. So in some sense, these estimates are called correlational. It's correlational but not causal. But if you want to really do causal, then you really have to take into account lots of other factors which AI can enable you to do that. And some of the things that I alluded to before, that AI can use some technology which will allow you to figure out what the counterfactuals are. And then based on the counterfactuals, you can figure out. Now, the other thing that you can do also, and this is something that we did with this hospitality chain, we found that paid search was not really all that, you shouldn't be giving so much credit to paid search. They were giving the paid search 10% credit for conversions, but our model suggested it was only 6%. And they said, how do we check? Because there is no ground truth. How do we know what it is? So what they did was they said, okay, we're going to turn off paid search. All right, for a couple of weeks, we will turn off paid search and then see what happens to conversions. Right? Is there a 10% drop in conversions or is there a 6% drop in conversions? Because that will tell you, you're doing some experiments and then trying to do what happens. So those kinds of experiments can be done. You can, even though you use AI and get correlational estimates, you can do experimentation afterwards in order to check whether those estimates are correct or not.
Professor, with so many marketing channels today, how do AI tools prioritize which touchpoints matter most in driving conversions?
Okay, that's a very good point. So I'll just take the example of transformer, all right? So the transformer technology is called, it is a self-attention mechanism. So if you take a particular sentence, I am going to the market, right? So let's take that sentence. So what the transformer does is it looks at I and then relates it to going to market. And then it goes to market and then relates it to going and market I, and so on. So each and every word is related to each other using the self-attention mechanism, right? And what it really does is actually it has multiple heads, and each of those heads will capture some perspective of those self-attention mechanisms. So let me give you an example with the attribution. So let's say a person has paid search and then touches display and then come to your website and converts, right? And one attention mechanism is going to look at how paid search is related to display and how paid search and display are related to conversion. Now, another mechanism may actually, another head can actually be looking at how is affiliate links associated with conversion and so on. So it comes up with different perspectives. And in our modeling, what it really does is it associates each of those heads with consumers' behavioral patterns. So I can actually take a consumer and say, this consumer's pattern, which head explains this consumer's pattern? And I can say that, oh, this consumer is basically driven by what happens in paid search. And this consumer is driven by what happens in affiliate link, and so on and so forth. So I will be able to tell more about each of those consumers and give more descriptive insights into the consumer's behavior, and thereby understand which channels are very critical in moving the needle for this particular customer, right? So this is very powerful. So I can then use this information in order to target the right kind of customers with the right kind of channels, right? And so that's the advantage of having these multiple heads, and the multiple heads helping you in order to identify the patterns which are inherent in different customers' journey, and then using it to predict what they will do next. And not only that, you can also decide what kind of targeting you want to do for these different customers.
Professor, how can marketers balance the sophistication of AI-driven models with the need for actionable insights their stakeholders can understand and trust?
Yeah, this is a very good point, very good question, because much of AI tends to be black box. And so now one thing that we did find, in our discussion, so we were actually telling them, hey, AI can do this and that and everything else. Some of the questions that managers have was, I mean, it's okay that you're telling me go target this person based on what we have, but why? So they want to know the reasons. So it's not just enough to say, how you should target or what you should target, but the question of why, the explainable part of AI is very important, because as you rightly put, if they don't understand it, they will not trust it. So you got to make all the AI models totally understandable to your target, managers or anybody else that you're using these AI technology for, so that they will have the buy-in. And so what we try to do is, whatever AI technology that you're using, now in computer science, for example, a lot of AI technology is being used, and they really don't care about the explainable part, because it's a technique. They are trying to do some prediction. And once they've done the prediction, they really don't care what the intermediary things are, what the intermediary weights are, and so on and so forth. But in marketing, you have to make some effort in order to understand what the intermediary weights are, so that you can explain to your managers what the patterns are. Like I talked about the heads. If the different heads are telling you different patterns, right? In a computer science, these things have been done so that they capture different patterns, and then what they are interested in is the final outcome. But here we need to really tell them, okay, these are the different patterns, and this is the different patterns that map onto a different consumer's behavior, and so on. And if you do that, then it becomes much more explainable. So one of the challenges that we have as marketers is use AI, but use AI not only for predictive purposes, but also for descriptive purposes, so that people can be told what they actually do and what do they explain, so that people can understand them and trust them more.
Professor, in your perspective, what's the next frontier of AI in marketing measurement beyond attribution and media mix modeling?
Okay, that's again another different, wonderful question. Now, I look at it as different phases. Attribution is one, and then comes media mix. And then the last one, which is going to be the next frontier, is going to be causal and predictive inference, right? So, a predictive intelligence, if I want to call it. Now, let me tell you what attribution does. Attribution, as I said, is backward looking. What worked in the past, right? Now, when I look at media mix, I'm looking a little forward and I'm saying, I know what worked in the past and hoping that this will work in the future. This is what I want to do, right? So this is basically telling you, based on the data that you have seen in the past and hoping that the data will remain the same going forward, the patterns will remain the same. This is what I want to do. Now, when it comes to causal and predictive intelligence, you're asking this question, what will work in the future, right? Now, AI can really do wonderful things. And I talked about this, counterfactuals, right? So if I take the historical data and I have the consumers and this is how they were targeted and so on and so forth. And if I want to ask the question, had I targeted them differently, what would have happened? Right? Now there are new things that are available, which is like synthetic consumers. So if I take a consumer that I had in that customer journey data, I'll try to create a customer who is very similar to this customer that I have. Let's say I have one customer here, A, and I'm trying to create a clone of that customer. It's called a synthetic customer who is going to behave very similarly like this customer behaves, right? And so now what I have is a customer here who will behave similarly like this customer, but then I'm going to give something different than what this customer got and see how this customer is going to behave, right? So this digital twins is becoming a big concept in AI. So they are going to create digital twins of actual customers. So these digital twins are twins of these actual customers who behave in a very similar way. But then for each of the digital twin, I can try different policies and see how they react. All right. So it's like creating counterfactual using AI so that I understand what would have happened had I done something different to this customer. Now, this is very powerful. If I am able to do this, then I can say, well, across the different policies that I put on these digital twins, what is the best policy to make that person buy? Right? So now I can turn it around and then implement what will happen in the future if I were to do certain things. And then I can find the optimal policy to implement so that I maximize my conversions. So that is where it is going. Digital twin is a concept that been adopted, and there is a lot of research going on. And both in academia as well as big tech companies, they are working very hard to create these digital twins so that you can see what will happen if different policies are put on those twins.
Professor Kannan, I would like to conclude this episode with one last question. For marketers who are just starting to explore AI-powered optimization, what are the first steps they should take to ensure success and measurable impact?
Yeah, good question. This is regardless of whether you're doing AI or not. These are things that you really need to ensure that you have within the organization. First of all, you got to have good data. So what we mean by good data is, you have customer level data, all the touch points of this customer, and you also want to ensure that you have, got, approval opt-in from the customer so that their data can be used and so on and so forth, because privacy is becoming a big issue. And so understanding each of the different channels through which I have data so that there is not much missing data, right? Having very good, clean data is absolute essential before you can start on anything. Because if you don't have good data, junk in is junk out. So you don't want that situation happening. So your policy making can only be as good as the data that you have. So it is important, if they haven't really started collecting data, to start collecting whatever data that is permissible under the situation, and getting permission from customers, and putting it together. And if the customers are your customers, they're already buying from you, then you have large enough data from them so you can organize it in a nice way, right? So that's number one, having a good data, having a good policy for getting data, and so on. And the second thing about applying any of these techniques is to take a use case, especially for AI. Take a use case which is small, which is going to be handleable, and it will be like an example so that people can be convinced that the modeling that you're doing is going to work, right? You don't want to take a scope which is very wide, because that is asking for trouble. So take a scope which is a small scope, well-defined problem, and use these AI-based models with the nice data that you have, and show success, because showing success is important for getting people to sign on for greater projects. And this is exactly what we are doing. So I'm working with a consulting company, and they are taking these, all these AI-based techniques, and they're saying, okay, we're going to give it for free for you for the first application that we're going to do, because I want to show you the ROI on it, right? So I'm going to show you how good it is. I'm going to give it away for free, show it as an example. And then if you're convinced, then you enter into an agreement for doing long-term stuff. So that's exactly the same. Within the company, you got to make sure you have a case that is easily handled, right? And now once those things happen, then there are other things that you may want to go about doing it, that you want to make sure that it is interpretable, especially if it's coming from AI. You want to make sure it is an interpretable form that people can understand and buy into it. Because if it's not explainable, if you're just going to say, well, this is what it is, and people don't know what is the ground truth, then it's going to be a problem. So explaining helps to people to get into it. So explainability is important, and then the buy-in happens, and then you can start rolling it out across larger projects. But it's absolutely important to have data, good data policy, and then taking a use case which is small and helping it to grow, having explainability, and then moving on forward within the organization.
Listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into AI-powered attribution and media mix modeling. We hope today's conversation has shed lights on how marketers can leverage AI, big data, and advanced analytics to make smarter decisions, optimize spend, and truly measure the impact of every campaign. A big thank you to our guest, Dr. P.K. Kannan, for sharing insights, case studies, and practical strategies that marketers can start applying today. And to our listeners, remember, the key takeaway is not just about adopting the latest technology, but about using it thoughtfully to reduce bias, improve accuracy, and drive meaningful ROI. Thank you once again, Professor Kannan, for joining us and sharing the research insights with us today. Thank you so much.
Now, thank you again, Deepak. And again, for the viewers, you can go and Google me, PK Kannan, and come to my website. And you have papers, and you have lots of other material that you can use. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Again, thanks for having me. It was great talking to you, Deepak.
Thank you.